Hello, everybody, and welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Reverend Jerry Yaakov, and I'm your host. I'm also a student and teacher of metaphysics. Much of these episodes really revolve around wisdom paths, paths that take us to a heightened sense of consciousness and a spiritual awakening. One example would be the 12 step programs. I've been a member of a particular fellowship for over 30 years, and I find that the 12 steps really give me a blueprint that I can practice day in and day out. I appreciate the prayer and meditation aspects to the 12 steps. I appreciate the recognition of our powerlessness in the 12 steps and the existence of a higher power, of your own understanding, a loving higher power, which then raises our consciousness to the place where we know true serenity and true peace, regardless of the circumstances. Because true serenity and peace is an inner condition. And our higher power, which I call God, Buddha, Christ, Tao, Krishna, anything that really symbolizes the full kindness and love that we are, and that really this universe is. That guides me. That gives me a place in my mind of calmness and serenity. And it's something that I like to share in my explorations to a higher consciousness and in my ministry when I counsel people or just simply interact in my life with loved ones and neighbors, those that I interact with and with strangers. I can contemplate that inner higher power, and then I'm guided in my interactions. This is the way that takes, of course, practice. I mentioned the word practice earlier when we first began the episode, and I have some readings. This is from the Buddha perspective, the Buddhist perspective, and I like it. It's a Shambhala Pocket Classics, Teachings of the Buddha. Here's a copy of my Teachings of the Buddha, edited by Jack Kornfield, who's a very well-known Buddhist teacher in this country and of course around the world. Read many of his books, listened to his recordings. He's a fine teacher of the Buddhist tradition. Well, let's take a look at the aspect of practicing. And what I mean by practicing is living one's life consistent with the moral and ethical and really, to me, theological precepts of, um, of Buddhism and all of the other recognized wisdom paths that take us to a higher level of consciousness. Here's a reading that I'll start with. And it says, "Friends, I know nothing which is as intractable as an untamed heart. The untamed heart is indeed intractable. Friends, I know nothing which is as tractable as a tamed heart. The tamed heart is indeed tractable. Friends, I know nothing which tends toward loss as does an untamed heart. Indeed, the untamed heart tends toward loss. Friends, I know nothing which tends toward growth as does a tamed heart. Indeed, the tamed heart tends towards growth. Friends, I know nothing which brings suffering as does an untamed, uncontrolled, unattended, and unrestrained heart. Such a heart brings suffering. Friends, I know nothing which brings joy as does a tamed, controlled, attended, restrained heart. Such a heart brings joy. Well, they're using the term tamed. We were using the term practiced. I also like to use the word disciplined. You know, an undisciplined mind can accomplish really nothing. It's the tamed heart, it's the loving, disciplined heart that can accomplish. And this takes a process of practice every day, living one's life consistent with the Buddha and the Christ. And when we've lived consistent with their example, their ideal, and of course it's well documented in the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, exactly how the Buddha would suggest that we live and how the Buddha teaches that we live. Right concentration, right thought, right livelihood, no sexual misconduct, no use of drugs and alcohol, kindness, loving kindness towards people, working diligently, exemplify the ideal life, the moral, ethical life. And what is it that contributes to our suffering? We know that that's the desires, the ego that wants more and more of that which we really never really need. And there's an expression, you can't get enough of what you really don't need. And of course, there are aversions as well. They lead to suffering as well as desires. So if we look at people, places, things, and we have critical judgments about them, we have thoughts of their undesirability, they're not measuring up, their faults, their sinfulness, their guilt. This leads to our own suffering as well. When we practice in our minds, in our meditations and prayer, in our sitting, we look at our lives. First, of course, the source of the suffering. Am I being critical? Do I have aversions that I obsessively think about? Do I have resentments and grievances that I look to in some way get even with people or to be right? I love the expression, it's a question, but it's a wonderful one. Do I want to be right or would I rather be happy? You can't have both. Being right really is a proclivity towards suffering, whereas being happy is a proclivity towards love and kindness and acceptance and a willingness really to forgive people, even though they may have made mistakes, even though they have in some way been unkind. We recognize their untamed heart and we recognize our own practice. And we recognize that what we want to do is stand for the high ground, the high moral ground, not in an egoic way where we lord it over people, but in a way that's exemplifying the Christ and the Buddha. Well, that's a little bit on the taming of the heart, the practice, and the discipline. Well, let's go to another reading here. This one is short, but it's so lovely. It says, live in joy, in love, even among those who hate. Live in joy, in health, even among the afflicted. Live in joy, in peace, even among the troubled. Look within, be still, free from fear and attachment. Know the sweet joy of the way. Well, the way of the Buddha and of the Tao, in my mind, is such a high and lofty, wonderful way to practice and live one's life. Living in joy, for example, even amongst those who hate. Well, we live that way because we are not enmeshed with people who hate, people who have dissension as a way of dramatizing their lives. What we're more interested in is reconciliation with love, joining, unionizing with our fellows, living in joy. Living in joy is a choice. It's a decision that we make. And when we make that decision, we look at others who may not be in that lofty emotional and spiritual state, and we have true compassion and empathy for them because we remember our own experiences when we failed, when our hearts were not really trained in joy, when we were not practiced. But things are changing. Not perfection yet, but change and progress. This is what's necessary as we sit, as we listen to the voice within of the Buddha and of the Christ. The living Christ and the living Buddha always speak to us in the highest order. And when we listen, when we show our willingness to be guided, we do know the truth. And as it says, the truth shall set us free. And love, of course, casts out all suffering and all fear. So we want to align our thinking, our Buddha Christ minds, with the ideations of love, forgiveness, kindness, compassion, true integrity, and ethics. This is the way that we find ourselves in a higher and higher state of consciousness, a state of consciousness that includes unionizing with others, completing any perceived gaps between myself and my brother. Those are unnecessary gaps. And I have a reading, I think, that'll come a little later concerning that. Well, again, live in joy. Live in joy and health. Live in joy and in peace. Look within. This is the decision to look rather than outside at circumstances, to look within in the mind of Christ Buddha. We're making a decision to look within at the heavenly state of our consciousness, of our state of awareness. Is it lacking? Are we in our wrong minds? Do we fear? Do we have judgments and criticisms? If I look at that, I can make a choice for my right mind. And the right mind, of course, is the heavenly state of Christ Buddha. And once I make that decision, and I have free will to do that, I'm then calmed. It's like the waters of the sea are calmed. I say, peace, peace unto me, peace unto you. Let the waters be calm. Let the storm subside. And when I say that, I bring all of the unseen forces that are within my mind, the mind of the Buddha and Christ, to bear on my perception, on my witnessing, on my experience of life. And of course, all minds are joined. Ultimately, there's only one great mind, and that's the mind of God, Buddha and Christ. The three are one, as I am one in the mind of God. So when my consciousness is raised, it has the ability to calm the waters throughout the world and the universes and the multi-dimensions that we inhabit, both seen and unseen, perceptive, with our five senses, and that which is strictly on a consciousness basis without the five senses of time and space. Well, look within. Be still. This is so important that we look within without the outside raucous and disturbing noises and the distractions that most of us seek in some way or another for entertainment. It's kind of like rubbernecking when you go past a car accident. There's nothing to see that's uplifting. What is it about our egoic interest in rubbernecking? And the rubbernecking, you can fill in the blank as to what it is that attracts yours and my attention. Is it the lowest common denominator of movies, television, magazines, books, stories, gossip, chit chat, all kinds of distractions? Well, that distracts us from the stillness. Be still and know that I am God. We can train our minds and our hearts that way. And then we know that when we're listening, God's voice speaks to us. The Buddha and the Christ speak to us. It's our internal GPS system, and it's made with that purpose and function. That's exactly what it's there for. But it's our choice when and if we listen. Those voices never go away. They're the voice of love. Teach only love, for that is what we are. Learn only love, for that is what we're becoming. And we want to make the tuning in, if you will, at the level of the mind, so susceptible in the stillness that that still small voice becomes louder and louder. And I think that's another attribute of what happens when we do learn to train our minds and our hearts with love. The stillness doesn't scare us anymore. The quiet is something we look forward to in our meditations. And the prayer is something that we use only to ask for the greater good for everyone, with no one and nothing left out. Well, again, look within and be still, free from fear and attachment. Know the sweet joy of the way. And the way is the way of the Tao and the Buddha and the Christ. That is the way for us. There are many wisdom paths up the side of the mountain, so we reach the pinnacle, enlightenment. The state of enlightenment is a state of pure joy and bliss, perfect serenity and unity. We're vigilant for that state of mind. We talk with God day in and day out, moment by moment. And in that practice, our behaviors and our speech changes, our work lives change, our relationships and marriages and families of origin are all transmuted and transformed. And we become that which God created us, rather than that which we thought we had created of ourselves, filled with doubt and sin and guilt and fear. We've let that go, and now we're one in the Christ Buddha. Well, here's another reading we'll go to. And this is the one I made reference to earlier about bridging the gap between myself and a brother. And the metaphor that's used is here a river, but it's a metaphor of separation, the idea of separation, using a river as an example. Few cross over the river. Most are stranded on this side. On the river bank, they run up and down. But the wise person, following the way, crosses over beyond the reach of death. That would be ego, missing the mark, sin. We put aside the ideas of separation from our creative spirit and from our brothers who are also created in the likeness and image of spirit, of God, of the way, of the Buddha and the Christ. So the wise follow the way. They cross over beyond the reach of death, the ego, free from desire, free from possessions, free from attachment and appetite, following the seven lights of awakening and rejoicing greatly in his freedom. In this world, the wise person becomes themselves a light, pure, shining, free. Well, this is a wonderful Buddhist story, of course, the crossing over from the shore of the ego over to the shore of the Buddha. Gate gate paragate, parasamgate bodhisvaha. Gone over forever, never to return. And that's our goal. It's a journey without distance. It's in our minds. And it's a journey that's never really changed. It's always been the same, from a state of death and sinfulness to a state of eternal life and Buddhahood, Christhood, the other side, the other shore. And of course, once we are there, there's no reason for us to come back. We've learned our lessons. We've discovered that we are, in fact, one in the Christ, one in the Buddha. And that is everything that we've ever wanted and dreamed of. Not desires on the earthly plane, not desires. And of course, we need to fulfill our basic needs. But I subscribe to a life of simplicity. And I'm saying simplicity for each person may be different. But to have an addiction, an ego addiction, an obsession, ego thoughts of wanting more to prove in some way that I'm okay, that all those ego thoughts of death and of fear and guilt and sin really aren't true because I have all these things. And it's only a good person that has things. Well, of course, that's not true. We are inherently good. We are inherently perfect in the creative sense that we are like the God that created us in its likeness and image. There's no gap. There's no separation. And things can only get in the way. That adds, if you will, to the idea of outwardly achieving rather than inwardly achieving by disciplining the mind. That's the focus. And all else will be given unto us. We know this is true. The more we focus on heaven within our minds, then all else is given to us. And the more we give to our brothers and we allow them that which we've already attained within our own hearts and minds, the more it comes back to us. Why? Because as we said earlier, all minds are joined in the one great mind that we all share. So as I give, I receive. As I receive, I give. And there is that circle of life, that circle of at-one-ment, pronounced at-one-ment or atonement. And that circle is the circle that makes all the difference. It's the way of the Tao. It is actually the way of life itself. Giving and receiving are one in truth. Well, that's a lovely reading, Bridging the Gap, Crossing Over the River. Well, let's take a look at one more reading. I think that's the last one I have. And it says, however young, the seeker who sets out upon the way shines bright over the world. But day and night, the man who is awake shines in the radiance of the Spirit. Meditate, live purely, be quiet, do your work with mastery. Like the moon, come out from behind the clouds, shine. This is a wonderful reading in Teachings of the Buddha, which, as I said earlier, is edited by Jack Kornfield. And this is a Shambhala Pocket Classic, which is available, I believe, on Amazon and other bookstores. So the seeker who sets out upon the way, that would be the Bodhisattva. That would be the one who seeks to overcome all of the egoic identification. The Bodhisattva has attained knowledge, truth, witnessing to the light, shines light and brightness over the world. That's our function as a Bodhisattva, as a teacher of God. We're here to teach. We're here to learn and teach. We're here to share. But day and night, the man who is awake shines in the radiance of the Spirit. This is a direct example, or at least a direct reference to the Buddha and the Christ. We're shining really like the moon. The moon has its own, it does not have its own source of light. It's shining really from the sunshine. So, using again some analogy, the sun is the original source or creator, and we, created in its likeness and image, then shine its light of the sun or the creator. So we shine as brightly. It's just that we're not the origin or the creator of the light. We're the vessel that, in a way, illuminates through a reflection. We're reflecting, we're showing, and of course, this takes clarity. My mind has to be as clear and I think clear is the word I want to use, as clear as possible, so that there's no obscurations to the light that's shining from the source, from the Creator, from the Buddha and the Christ. My mind is one with theirs. I'm the created, not the creator. But my mind, as I practice and as I make sure that I'm disciplining my mind, I clear away the clouds. And that's what it says here. Like the moon, come out from behind the clouds and shine. Well, this is a service that we all provide when the bodhisattva recognizes his or her true purpose. And the bodhicitta, which is the dharma that we need to learn, the principles, the real principle of living a life well lived, of shining a light that's necessary as a true function of who and what we are. This is our nature. This is our function. This is our joy. And when we're aligned with our function and our purpose, our true purpose, as a bodhisattva, as a disciple, as the Christ and the Buddha and the Tao, we know true peace and bliss and serenity. And because of that, we're happy and we're joyous and we're free. Well, that about concludes this episode. I'm so grateful and thankful that you've joined us. I want to thank the NECAT Network for putting us on the air on its TV station and also on the YouTube channel where some other people can watch. And I want to thank my wife, Dr. Candace Adelson, for editing these videos. And I want to thank each and every one of you that either by chance or divine appointment joins with us each week. Thank you. Peace, shalom, and we'll see you next time. Amen.